We're starting the speaking test, right?
Okay.
All right. So can you please begin by
Uh,
introducing yourself?
okay. So I'm Yota, and now I'm living in Bangladesh, Dhaka, and I love the country because there are many nature, which I cannot uh see very often in my country, Japan, and also people are nice. Everyone is kind to me, and also I like my school.
All right. Fair enough. Now, can you tell me something about your family? How many members do you have in your family?
Okay. So my parents and I have one brother. He's younger than me. I'm now 18 and my brother is 14, which is so. And we go to the same school, and we both love baseball. So we sometimes play like baseball in the field in
Okay.
school.
What
Yep.
kind of people do you generally enjoy spending time with?
Okay. Since I'm not the like type of extrovert person. I'm honestly like to be honest, I am an introvert person. So I like to spend time with people that are like that like to spend their time at their home or
Okay.
like reading books or watching movies rather than going like outside and having fun like party. Yeah.
Okay. Do you prefer to spend more time with your friends or with your family?
I prefer spending my time with my friends over my parents. The reason is um like the reason is that we like I like I can be smile and I can laugh
Right.
more frequently when I'm with my friends.
Okay. At this point, we're going to move on to the next part of the speaking test. You will have a topic and then four questions associated with the topic. You will have exactly 1 minute to prepare yourself, during which you can use a paper and a pencil to organize your thoughts. After one
Yep.
minute of preparation, you'll have to speak on the topic for 1.5 to 2 minutes. You will not be allowed to look at the questions when you begin speaking. If I stop you at the 2 minute mark, do not take that as an indication of how well the exam is going. Are the instructions clear?
Yep.
All right. I started sharing the question. Could you please give me a confirmation when you can see the question?
I can see it.
All right. You have precisely 1 minute to prepare yourself. You can begin when you're ready. All right. We are done with the 1 minute. Can you begin your answer?
Okay. Okay. The person I admire is Mr. Takahashi, who is my neighbors, one of my neighbors, and I admire him very much because like what he has achieved during his life. He came from a very poor area in Japan, and I've heard that when he was his family was very so his family was in very poor conditions, and he couldn't get like enough school educations when he was younger. But at the same time, he was interested in business, and that's why he commit himself to studying about businesses, and also he told me that he sacrificed everything to achieve his goal, and that's why, and that's the most respect, respectful part that I pay for him because I feel like, and I'm also interested in business aspect, and he, yeah, so that's why
All right. Okay.
I like
So
him.
we're going to move on to the next part of the speaking test now. Let's talk about famous people in your country. What kind of people become famous people nowadays?
Okay. I feel like more and more people are able to become famous due to the development of social media like SNS. Instagram or Twitter and YouTube. And I feel like nowadays the most important part is how effective that person is to the society itself. And for example, in old days, famous persons were like very limited to celebrity or sports player, like famous sports player. But now, like even like normal people can be famous. So that's the one thing that we've experienced, like some changes over the last 10 years or 5 years. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about being famous in the public eye. What are the good things about being famous? Do you think they're advantageous or disadvantages?
Uh, in my opinion, there are more disadvantages rather than advantages. The reason is that they are always some prying eyes for that person, like what he or she does every day, and how she lives her life or some sort of things. So I feel like it's good to be famous because you can get more money and more fame, but at the same time they are like a negative effect when we think of how life can be changed due to their like fame.
All right. How does the media in your country treat famous people?
Could you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So, how does the media in your country treat famous people? Media can be newspaper, radio, television shows, etc.
Okay, I think I'm going to talk about SNS and also magazines. So on those type of medias, we tend to find any negative points about that person. And nowadays, the trend is becoming very aggressive. We tend to find like we tend to find about bad things about people rather than finding a good point or what he or she achieved during their lives. And I think this is because like we can get more information than old days, and we tend to like compare ourselves with them and like jealous or other type of feelings, so that like we tend to feel like think that we want to be the like same category or same level to them.
All right. Finally, how do you think or why do you think ordinary people are interested in the lives of famous people?
uh, I think the one reason is that their lives are very different from what we live our lives. So like because for example, I'm very interested in how baseball players in Japan live and how they spend their lives, because I'm interested in baseball, and also like their lives are basically limited to baseball, and that is what makes me very interested in those people, because I cannot be baseball player. This is the truth. And like and also like sometimes imagine what if I was a baseball player. So that's what like makes many people interested in lives of celebrity or famous people.
All right. Very well rounded answer. We'll conclude the speaking test here, and I'll give you a brief rundown of the scores that you've earned in the different criteria and your overall band score. So
Yep.
there are 4 different criteria based on which you are scored in your IELTS speaking test. The first of which is fluency and coherence. In this criteria, your score is a 7 out of 9. In order to get an 8, you need to have 2 things. You need to have your answers properly developed, which your answers were. but you also need to minimize any sort of language related hesitation which you had. So if you want to get an 8, you can have content related hesitation, meaning when you're speaking you can't remember certain information and you pause because of that. That's perfectly fine.
Um,
But when you're speaking, if you take a pause because you're trying to formulate the sentence or you're trying to remember a particular vocabulary, that indicates weakness in language comprehension or language fluency. So if you want to get an 8, try to minimize those language related hesitation, because in terms of development your answers are already focused, on point and relevant. For lexical resources, your score is an 8 out of 9. You are able to use words effectively and with flexibility. So the more relevant words to a particular sector you can use, the higher of a score you get. For example, if I were to ask you to talk about your favorite movie actors, if you had said the movie has a lot of good actors, you get a 6 because you're just successful with your words. If you say the movie had a lot of talented actors, you get a 7 because the word talented is more effective. If you say the movie had a talented cast, you get an 8 because cast is a specialized word which is regularly used in the music industry. So if you can use words which are specialized in whatever sector you are talking about, you should be able to get an 8, right? For grammatical range and accuracy, your score is should be between 7 and an 8. You did not have any major tense related errors. You had some errors or some weakness in fluency when you were trying to maneuver between different structures of sentences, but you did not really make any major systematic errors in your composition of structures or sentences. For pronunciation, your score is a 7 out of 9. I was able to understand everything that you were saying. However, your pronunciation is still influenced by your first language, and so unless you have phonetic applications sustained throughout the entire answer, it's going to be a bit difficult to get 8 or above in pronunciation. So your overall score for this particular speaking test is between a 7 and a 7.5. I am awarding you a score of 7, but in your main exam you can expect a score between 7 and a 7.5. Right?
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Uh, uh, I have one question
Yeah.
about my fluency. So
Okay.
I know that you said that like I sometimes paused a lot. So
Yeah.
that's what makes the score 7, like not 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And I have a question about that. Like if I if I'm thinking what to say, like how could I like pause so that the graded things that like I'm not pausing because of my English level, but like because I'm trying to like
Remember certain
construct.
things. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So the thing is, I feel like your first language is something other than English, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're speaking your mother language, your mother tongue, your first language, do you have more or less fluency compared to English?
I think more frequency.
More fluency, right? Because the words that you would need to construct sentences, the different elements and how they should be organized in order to convey whatever it is that you are trying to convey, are much more automatic for your first language compared to English. Why?
Yeah.
Because your proficiency in English is comparatively weaker or less than your first language. And so ultimately, it has to be, or it is considered to be, a language deficiency or weakness in language. And so the only way to improve that is by speaking. The more you speak, the more automatic those words and grammatical structures and patterns of sentences become for you. And the easier of a time you're going to have constructing sentences without having to think how to organize the information. Because part of your time goes to think about the topic, and then part of the time goes on to how to translate those information in the English language, which you don't necessarily need to do with your own language. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
So the more second language, English, the more you use this particular language, the faster it will be for you to use English as your default language, so that you don't necessarily have to think about how to present the information. Whatever you imagine is automatically translated in English, and so that will have little to no fluency. So it's a matter of speech. The more you speak, the easier it's going to get for you, or the faster it's going to get for you.
Okay.
Right? All right. Any other questions related to this particular test?
Yes. So should I be more concerned that I paused a lot during the test?
Not really. The thing is, your pauses or your breaks were not directly. The fact is, you did not make a lot of grammatical or vocabulary associated errors, right? So, if you want to get a higher score in, let's say, vocabulary or grammar, you would need to be more academic, or you would need to use more precise words, relevant words. For example, I am currently taking a class. That's not incorrect. But if you say, I am currently conducting a class, higher score. Not because conducting is a more difficult word, but because I am speaking about education. Conducting is a word which is used in the education sector. So my vocabulary is flexible enough that I can use words relevant to whatever sector I am having a discourse about, right? So getting your score higher is basically a result of how much discourse or conversation you have relevant to a particular topic. So the more you speak, the more you're likely to improve in your language, in English language, in essence.
Okay. Yep.
Right.
And also, I feel like my what I said in the test.
Yeah.
It's not good answers enough to fully demonstrate the answer to the questions.
Okay, so I'll give you a pointer about what you just felt about the exam. So the examiners will never give you a score based on how practical, reasonable your answers are, or whether your answers are better than someone else's, because the IELTS exam is to test your proficiency in the language. How good are you in using English effectively when communicating? If your answer is in some ways less mature compared to another student, let's say, you are never going to get a less score because of that, right? The examiner is not there to judge how smart of a student you are, because the IELTS exam does not test how smart a student is. It tests how good your English is. So the ideas that you present, as long as they are logical, on point, relevant, organized, you're good to go. If you think that, well, your answers could have been better, if your previous answers were on topic, it wouldn't have made any difference. Do you get my point?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's
okay.
Oh, yeah. So I have another question, last question. So how could I get 7 or 7.5 or 8?
Okay, so your vocabulary and grammar is already pretty okay. Pronunciation is an area in which you cannot necessarily improve within a handful of days, because it's a long-term thing, right? If I were to learn a new language, I would need to be properly, proficient in the language, and then I can slowly start working with pronunciation. So if I were you, I would start working with fluency and coherence, meaning, learning or mentally compartmentalizing all of the ideas and then presenting it in a more fluent manner. The more you speak, the easier it's going to be for you. You see, fluency and coherence is not as much relevant with English as it is with communication. So you can speak in your own language, because fluency and coherence has nothing to do with English or a different language. It has something to do with communication. So the better you are in communication, the faster it will be for you to, compartmentalize your ideas and present them in a coherent manner. So it has everything to do with how much you speak with people, how much you listen to people, and how well you argue or present your views in an organized manner so that it's easier for the reader to understand. It has less to do with English, more to do with communication. So I'd ask you to, start working from there. Watch a couple of YouTube tutorials or some lecture notes on how you can improve and organize your answer, and that should be more than enough. But your answers are already relevant, so you're already good to go from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we're gonna conclude the speaking test now. Your tentative score is a 7.